Hey everybody, and welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to some more Warpforge, except I feel like this game has changed so much since a week ago when the new rank system went live. And that's why I wanted to do a video today doing a bit of a recap on my experience with the week one ranked entire rework. It just feels like so many things are different. For the better, I think. We'll talk a little bit about the menaces of the format, and I'm going to try my hand here at kind of an early meta discussion, tier list, whatever you would call it, in hopes that, we can get a little bit of feedback. Of course, my cat has to be here right as I start recording. She's excited too, I guess, for the ranked format. So this is a snapshot of my exact profile right now, as you can see. With the Tim and Harry's old folks home right here at the top. And as you can tell, my three main factions have been Eldar, Orcs, and Tau. Did a little bit of dabbling with Necrons, although that didn't go terribly well. And then a little bit with Tyranids. And so I'm going to have some deck lists for you guys today, too, of what I'm specifically running, but also some builds that I'm thinking about running or trying, or definitely wanted to give at least a little bit of a snapshot. So as always, thanks for the support on the channel. We'll be doing some streaming, especially with the Gene Stealers coming out. I've just been interacting with a lot of the community. Big shout out to, Spec Marine, who else? Shrigma Mail, I was blanking on, and Slither especially. We do a lot of discussion. BJ as well. There's just been a lot of talk, and it's been great kind of getting to hear from the whole community, especially even last month doing the community war cry. So things are feeling lively, thank God. Things are feeling competitive, but like not a grind. It's just there's a new life with Warpforge, and I'm super excited to get into it. So right now we're averaging 2,800 on the global ladder, which I think has netted me a 44th position in the top global 50. So happy about that. But it's early days, and I know I'm going to have to do quite a bit of grinding. My soft goal, before we get into the meat of things today, is to hit 3K with 3 factions. I'm still undecided on the 4th. I kind of want Gene Stealers to be my 4th if it's good enough. And so far, I feel like the power level is closer to a Tau release than a Sisters of Battle release, but we'll see. We've only had a few previews so far. We still got a full other day, and we haven't seen much of the Warlords yet. So anyway, before I get carried away, let's get into what I feel like are the decks I'm seeing the most, and especially what are some of the breakout decks and tier list for week 1. So I kind of wanted to change the way I would do this tier list. I wanted to have 2 separate categories for breakout decks on the top left corner here and decks to watch out for. You could say decks to watch out for like tier 2-ish, tier 2.5. If you want to couch it that way. But really, I just haven't had enough time playing these decks or playing against them, and so I didn't really want to put my 2 cents in, but I would like to give some first impressions. So, first things first, Scarabs are back in a way that is scary. Disruption Blades has really changed what this deck can do. We'll talk a little bit more specifics, but Orikan, I think, has been menacing the ladder, and I would be wrong if we didn't talk about how powerful that has been. Secondly, Anvirr has really broken out onto the scene in a way that has not ever happened in this game for him. When we suggested, and the Eldar community largely suggested, reducing the cost of his Warlord ability, clearly that shifted things, and Reclaim the Stars is a real card now, especially with that build. And then lastly here for the breakout decks, I've seen a ton of Junith. I've also seen how hard people are grinding Junith in the Sisters of Battle leaderboard. Something's happening. I don't know if it's because the meta has opened up. I don't know if it's because people have more experience with the accumulation of all the Sisters of Battle buffs, which still were pretty lackluster for fixing the larger issues this last patch. But something's going on, and I just have played against it a bunch, and I feel like I can't not talk about that. But to get into a bit of the meat of it, the 3 top decks for me, and 2 of which I'm not surprised, are Orikan, Scarabs, Tyranid, kind of aggro, Synapse, whatever you want to call it, and Grukk, aggro control mid-range. I feel like it plays like aggro control, but either way, We will look at all three lists, but so Orikan, it's broken out into the scene. Scarabs has always been a resilient strategy when it's good. You have to kind of tech cards against it. It's a huge pain in the butt. So I just think that we're going to see more of it. As Slither had told me, it doesn't have a huge skill ceiling, so it's also like a really, new player friendly deck. There's no shade about that. If you got a deck that you can pick up and play and do well with, the more power to you. So I really think that Scarabs is here to stay, most likely this month. I'd be really surprised. But people are teching against it, and maybe that will kind of push it towards Implacable Conqueror. We'll see. Swarmlord, not surprised to see you here. Same with Grukk. I predicted that they would be kind of the top of the ladder. When Space Marines are nerfed, and as you can see, there are no Space Marines here. RIP Space Marines. But also it's kind of a breath of fresh air, but also I kind of feel bad about it. So I don't know. I have mixed feelings. But I just think Swarmlord is consistent. It got a little bit of a buff, I think, with the Neurogaunt. One drop that has Synapse. I think it's got some really just strong and consistent gameplay. And then Grukk, I feel like, is extremely flexible, can out-aggro you, can control in the matchup when it needs to. I rattled off an easy 6-1 this morning and climbed, a bunch of points. Obviously, it's still early days, but it was good last season. Spac Marine is 3,500 points on Orcs already. And is just killing it, and not specifically with Grukk. I think also playing Gascol and things like that. We were chatting a little bit last night, but I just think that Grukk is an incredible warlord, and I really would not sleep on this build or this specific build that I've been working on. And there's probably even better ones too out there. And then we get to tier 2, which I think is a lot closer together. Aun'va, I've gone back and forth with and talked a lot with Slither about this. Is he tier 1? Is he 1.5? Is he 2? Is he top of 2? I think putting him at top of 2, leftmost kind of being most power, most consistency out of it. I feel like that makes sense. I've climbed pretty easily with him. He does have some not so great matchups here and there, kind of looking at you, Sisters, kind of looking at you in terms of Tyranids at times, and I guess sometimes the Orcs, it kind of goes back and forth. But I think Aun'va and with more of kind of the stock drone control strategy is still very good into Eldar, into Necrons. And there's a lot of Eldar on the ladder. There's a lot of Necrons on the ladder. So I think that kind of puts him a little bit ahead. As we can see, Anvirr, I think, solidly in tier 2. I don't feel like I have the best build for it, but we'll talk about a list that I do have. And I just think that when you can consistently play Reclaim the Stars on E7, E8 without losing too much and then having this massive tempo swing, I think that it's the real deal. I think it's going to be around. Is it the most powerful strategy? I don't think it's tier 1, but I do think it's tier 2. Now, Tervigan experimented a little bit, talked a lot with Shriek Mamail. I think they're doing really well on the Tyranid leaderboard with it. I do think that the Neurogaunt change was a huge buff to the deck. You can do some really kind of crazy things on E5, E6 with the deck with Endless Swarm. And so I just really think people shouldn't sleep on that. They should give it a shot. And although it's not the best climbing deck in terms of time spent in games, it does have this sort of inevitability factor. And I just think that it's worth looking into. Now, Junith, some folks think she's tier 1 that I've spoken to. Some folks think she's tier 2, 2.5. I think it's fair to say that she's moved relatively solidly into tier 2. 2.5 is where I'd kind of been couching her as the breakout warlord from Sisters of Battle. I need more testing with Morven to really assess that buff, and I think Erica is still kind of struggling to really go over the top, but Junith does that well. Junith is, I think, one of the scariest late game options, but the trick is you got to get there. And I think the coin flip being in favor of Sisters going first versus going second, and if you don't have the Forge 40 card or even the Forge 20 card going second, I don't think the consistency is there. And even so, I'm still not convinced that the consistency is there under optimal conditions. But if you're trying to go late in this game, Sisters will beat you, and specifically Junith, I think, will beat you every time as long as they can get there. So that's kind of my 4 cents on that. Galen, we'll look at the deck list today, is my premier Eldar build. I like playing aggro. I like playing tempo. I think they've gotten a little bit of edges looking at you, Fire Prism, which has been a nice little addition. And even the Warlock Skyrunner actually has impressed me, just as a one-off. So I've enjoyed that as well. Now, these last two, I was like, are they 2.5? Are they decks to watch out for? But I think I'll always see Abaddon, and honestly, Warshaper has become very, very popular as one of the premier aggro strategies, besides, I guess, Swarmlord and Galen. So I feel like we have to talk about them. Abaddon, I still feel like, even with the mid-range, or if you're going tall, has some decent game into Necrons, has some decent game into Tyranids. Sometimes I played the Swarmlord side of that matchup before this patch and felt like I was getting kind of destroyed every time. Maybe I was playing it wrong. I don't think so. I've played a bit of Tyranid in my day, not so much Abaddon, but there are some times where you're dropping better units than the Tyranids, and you've got Helldrake Strike in your deck, and things like that. So I think Abaddon is still a good mention for tier 2, and then Warshaper kind of bringing up the last of the pack here. The strike makes a difference. It actually really helps in certain matchups. I still think that can he put up the numbers that Aun'va does? I don't know, because X-Limbo and Lord Edge have been extremely successful with Warshaper. Also, it's an aggro deck, so you can climb a bit faster, right? So, I don't know. Maybe he really is the real deal. I'm not sure in terms of consistency for win rate, but I think there's more to see there. I think we will be seeing Warshaper throughout this month. So, to kind of close out this segment, decks to watch out for. Again, these are decks I've seen feel pretty good in terms of their power level, but I haven't played against them enough, and I haven't really played with them enough. So Omysos, I've seen a ton of. That I almost wanted to put him in the breakout deck, just going full Savior Protocols, experimental drones, drone spam, and it is still really hard to deal with for certain matchups. And so I think that it's worth taking a look again at that build. RIP Shadow Sun. Some people play her and like her. I just still I can't really sign off on that deck being one of the top Tau warlords. I don't think that she is. Speaking of top warlords, I think Imatech has fallen in a way, but whenever the format's a little slower, I think Imatech does better, and I think Implacable Conqueror could be a nice meta shift if everyone is teching against Scarabs. And I think Imatech benefits from that pretty well. I think Orikan also has some playability with Implacable Conqueror too, but I think that Imatech is still, I'll see him here and there, and I still feel like the matchups are not that easy. Gaskull, Moon Squatch has got kind of a crazy build I've seen with Unbridled Courage and going more on the aggro side of things. I still think, obviously, the grindy control is worth looking into as the format slows. So I don't think we really want to sleep on some of these 40 health warlords. And to kind of round up that is Eliak Zephyrblade. I still feel like as an aggro warlord, I prefer Galen. I know I was talking to Doles this morning, and we were kind of going back and forth on maybe Galen can play Reclaim the Stars pretty effectively, and really if I'm going to play aggro, I should play Eliak. But I've played both I shouldn't say quite a bit, but I've played both this season, and I still feel like I have a better win rate going aggro tempo with Galen specifically. But I think Zephyrblade actually has quite a good matchup into Swarmlord and Grukk at times. Grukk is still a little bit harder, but I think Swarmlord you get to trade on really, really aggressively. And if they have not a hardened biology kind of turbo start, I think that Eliak actually has a pretty nice win rate into Swarmlord. So those are kind of the decks to watch out for, decks that, maybe when I make a full tier list later on this month. I really just don't think I can do that week one. But I think this is a bit of a good snapshot where my head's at, where my opinion's at for the format. So that's 14 decks that are competitive, which is, just kind of crazy to think about from last meta. So I'm just kind of smiling ear to ear from just that fact alone. So let's talk about some deck lists here, because I feel like I would be remiss if we didn't actually look at some builds. It always cracks me up. Unga Bunga Scarabs from Slither. It's just a very clear game plan. You play your cheap stratagems to just have this resilient threat with scarabs, and then disruption blades is just a cheaper self-destruction that you can actually engineer yourself, right? It's not random. And it just has really put this deck on the map, I think, in a way that it just never was. So I did advocate for Disruption Blades change. Yeah, so I guess guilty in the court of opinion, probably. My suggestion was just make the spell cheaper, but only be +1. They went, okay, well, we'll keep it at 3, but bring the power up. So 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. I think this deck is kind of scary. So I guess if you want to go out and play it, go out and play it. I'm probably going to avoid it, but I understand why people have not. It's a really, really good option right now. Speaking of good options, and speaking of a breath of fresh air, new Keltalk, best Keltalk. Been having a lot of fun with this. I think I will return to Keltalk a little bit more on my Eldar climb. I think he can be really, really powerful with Reclaim the Stars. I wouldn't say this is the optimal build. I'm still really tweaking and testing things. It's week 1. But I think being able to really consistently play Reclaim the Stars without too much issue, I guess is the way I would put it, is a really, really powerful thing to do. Even just having an evasive maneuver as a 1-of, I think, has been a helpful change. Otherwise, I think it's operating, with some of the better Eldar cards and kind of able to go off pretty consistently. So I've enjoyed that quite a lot. And then Swarmlord, definitely wanted to put up kind of my newer list with Lictor, Nuragon, and even like a 1-of Tech Darkened Sky. I don't want to change the build too much. I think that's something I did a lot of with Aun'va last season and might have compromised kind of the integrity of the deck. But I think some of the changes with Nuragon and Lictor, not changes with Lictor, but changes in the format make Lictor a bit better as like just able to punch really hard while people are setting up or having kind of greedier late game builds. And then Nuragon just being another cheap Synapse creature, just exactly why we play Neuraloid. I think kind of pulls its weight as well. So this deck just punches hard. It's kind of hard to interact with it. It just has some god draws as well. Like, I don't know. I just think Swarmlord is just such a good option right now, and was I think tier 2 to the tier 1 of Ultramarines last season. So that's my 2 cents on that. Just to close out the video, and I know we've covered a lot, I just wanted to go over what are my exact builds for Tau, Orcs, and Eldar. I know, like, there's all the competitive integrity, and not everyone wants to share lists, but I'm a content creator, and I like talking about it, so here we go. This is the OG Aun'va. I'm calling it that because we're really returning to what it was before with a few tweaks. I think the standouts that have changed is adding some Crisis Battlesuit as like some early game power, really annoying into Swarmlord in particular. And then even the 1-of Warrior Marksman. This is a list that Slither and I have worked on together a bit, although I think he's really mastered it. I'm still kind of tweaking, my playstyle and kind of what works for me, but it's been a relatively easy climb. Even shaving a Lone Spear actually has felt pretty good, and putting a little bit more focus on some of the drone package with missile, stealth, and DS8. It's still just good into Eldar. It's still good into Necrons, especially the Scarabs. So I think that the build has felt pretty good, but into late game stuff, I think sometimes into Orcs, certainly into Sisters, you can really run out of gas if you're not able to apply enough pressure. So that is OG Aun'va. What am I running for Orcs? None other than Mr. Grukk himself. I love the playstyle. It's my favorite deck right now. It's aggro, it's control. It makes your opponent play into your flankers. It makes your opponent overcommit into Will of Gork. You can go off, with your little Gretchen mob guys with Pyromaniacs. There's just, this deck has so much flexibility and diversity of play, and I just don't ever get sick of playing it. So if you haven't tried this kind of shell, I really would encourage you to. I think there are 1 or 2 spots in this deck that you can switch around. I'm running a 1-of Bomb Squig, just for some of the kind of go wide matchups. That could also be the 5-cost flanker that has Tide. I think there's other stuff. There's even the 7-cost stealther, which BJ and I were talking about, the commando with a K, which is hilarious. That can be kind of potent in slower matchups. Can't really interact with it. It hits like a truck. So, yeah, I if you haven't played this deck, it's Spac Marine is 3,500 with orcs, whether it's through this or Gaz or whatever. I just think that orcs are a good place to be. And then here's my Meta Gale build. Like I said, not much has changed, and I'm still really happy with it. But I think Fire Prism actually gives you a bit of an edge into the Orcs and Chaos matchup, which you didn't have before, because punching for, 6 damage on a 1 armor unit, like the fact that this can hit Grukk's face, like if I'm playing against my same deck and I put armor and then I get to play a Fire Prism and dome you for 5, that is, I've been kind of saying, or maybe I haven't said it on on my channel, but like I feel like Eldar are one additional burn spell away from being the best aggro option in terms of like kind of edging out Uriel, what he used to be. Uriel is definitely not what it used to be anymore. And Fire Prism kind of did that with the update to dealing more damage, dealing double damage to something that has armor. So I think that's made a difference. Like I said, Warlock Skyrunner has actually made quite a difference as well. I don't think I'd go with 2. I haven't tried that yet, but 1 has felt pretty good. The stats on it are, it's a 5/5 flyer, so it's a little, I don't know. It's not that hard to clear, but sometimes like someone wipes your board with your little guys, and you have all these Spirit Stones, and then you dome them for like 4 to 8 damage. Again, there's more burn to be had, and I feel like that actually makes quite a difference for the aggro tempo build. That's what I got for you. It's the week 1 ranked recap. Honestly, if I can, maybe I'll do a week 2. I'm not sure I could do a recap every single week. We'll see how things go, but I definitely want to get my take on new ranked, frankly, a new Warpforge, and then, just kind of how this system is working out. So we also have tons of Gene Stealer stuff coming up. I think the channel is going to have plenty on it as long as I can get to videos and streaming. But I'm having a blast, and it's a breath of fresh air, to say the least. So as always, I will catch you guys in the next one.